Where are all the aliens? It's a paradox, a Fermi paradox. In fact, if there's so much space out there, so many planets, so many stars, so many potential areas for life, why haven't we found any aliens yet? In fact, a new study that we're about to go through surveyed over 10 million different star systems and didn't hear so much as, almost broke the pressurization on the, and it didn't hear a single peep from any alien civilization, when in theory there could be dozens, hundreds, thousands maybe. Why? Well, we'll get into that in today's office hours, right after I land this bad boy real quick. Oh, man, pulling the G's landing that thing is pretty serious. My body, like many of you are saying in the chat, is ready. Hello and welcome to Office Hours, which is a live version of the facility where good old Professor Kyle opens up his blast doors and tries to answer all your very nerdy, sciencey questions off the top of his head with the best of his ability, with the hope of, oh, you guessed it, educating, learning, being fun, being silly, not doing things that are super gifable. And of course, we go through a number of things during the week. We're going to be going, as we usually do, through 5 topics. This week we'll be covering aliens, that, this, that, back to briefcase, not briefcase, and that. And that last one's kind of depressing. But before we get to all that, I want to tell you where all the aliens are, or where we might find them, or why we aren't. Anyway, Super Chat's also enabled, so if you really want me to see a message, you can put a, just like that, from Sidecar, but you can put something in the Super Chat. I'll do my very, very best to get to all of them that I can, but if I cannot get it or I miss it, you're still simping for science, and I appreciate that. And if you want to join the facility, get behind-the-scenes content, you want to join our Discord to talk with me almost every day, episodes early, merchandise, all that stuff, you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, as my security team is putting in the chat, and don't rile up security. They have wrenches, so let's go to our very first topic, even though we have 2 soups from Sidecar. Thank you so much. We got to talk about aliens, bro. So behind me, you see this spider-like array. And this is the Murchison Wide Field Array in Australia. And they just published a new study. Now, what that study was doing was seeking to increase the area of sky you can look at if you're searching for something or signals in a certain amount of time with different mathematics and computer programs and stuff. All that's very complicated, but what they did in addition to their study is use some of that observation time to also look for techno signals or technological indicators. So you're looking at stars or patches of empty sky, and if you want to look for signs of life, signs of civilization, you would look for something, some kind of signal that would be what you would see if you looked at Earth. And we're going with Earth because it's our only data point. We don't know what an alien radio show might sound like, although now I really want to know what a radio show, like a morning show hosted by Gleep Glorp, would sound like. Back on the ones and twos, the Gazorpazor. Anyway, so you would look for signatures like you'd get from Earth, and so because it's our only data point, and so they were looking at 10 million. Sorry, I'm a little slow today. 10 million different stars in the sky over a 17-hour period looking. It was in the Vela supernova remnant, and they were looking at also 75 exoplanets, known exoplanets in that region, and so all these stars. And when they were looking for these technological indicators, radio signals, this is a radio telescope, so not looking at visible light. You wouldn't see an alien if it reflected visible light. This is radio signals, so maybe they have radio technology like we do. And over these 17 hours in this part of the sky, they didn't have a single hit, which isn't very surprising. We've never had good evidence for aliens anywhere, especially not on Earth. So it's not really a surprise. But what this paper pointed out was something that I hadn't thought of before, and is a different way to approach the Fermi paradox, which I said at the top was, well, if there's so many planets and stars, so many opportunities for life to be there. You know, if there's hundreds of billions of planets and hundreds of billions of galaxies, well, hundreds of billions of planets in each galaxy, of which there are billions, then even if the chance of life existing on a planet is 1 in a billion, there's hundreds of potential civilizations out there. So if there's possibly so many, why haven't we found any? Why haven't we been contacted? Any of all that stuff. So that's a Fermi paradox, but this is a different approach, and I want to get into it. So this is using the organization known as SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and this is something you can actually do at home, and it helps run, it's like kind of offloading their work on their servers and stuff. You can run it at home, and it's kind of fun. What they do is they sweep through different areas of the sky and different frequencies and try to look for radio signals that would be technologically indicative of some kind of intelligence, right? Now, their different approach, which I believe researchers came up with in 2018, and this paper that we're about to get to expanded upon, was called the haystack fraction. And they expanded on this scientifically, but I really like this metaphor. So, like finding aliens, metaphorically, is like finding a needle in the haystack. But to see how much ground you're really covering when you're looking, you need to know how big the haystack is. Obviously, if it's a very small haystack, it's easier to find the needle. In space, I don't know if you know this, is really, really big. So big, in fact, that this haystack fraction, it's not just a volume thing. It's not just, okay, how much of a volume of space have you looked for stuff in? Their haystack fraction, it's hard to say, is like 9-dimensional. And I don't mean to say that in a weird, like, it's 9 dimensions, man, crazy vibrations, strings, dude. No, it's 9 dimensions in that it's looking across 9 different variables to see what you're specifically looking at. So you're not just looking at the region of the sky, you're also looking at the radio bandwidth, how long you're looking for these things, what frequency are you looking for, blah, 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 blah. And so when you imagine 9 different sliding scales of variables, and you can look at every little point on each one of them, and you have that many combinations, plus you have, light years and light years of, cubic light years of space you're looking at, then the haystack fractions for looking for aliens are incredibly small. So, for example, this study improved upon the amount of haystack they were able to look through during single surveys with SETI equipment like this, and their haystack fraction was 1 over 2 times 10 to the negative 16th. So 1/20,000th trillionth of the space. So for what they were looking at, the amount of space that they actually look for aliens in was 1/20,000 trillionth of the total space looked at. Previous haystack fractions before this study were in minus 10 to the 19, minus 10 to the 21. So the analogy that one of the researchers used, I liked. It's like the amount of space we're really investigating aliens in is like a glass of water from the ocean, and that's it. So this is the differing approach to the Fermi paradox that I mentioned. Could it be that they all died out, or no civilization makes it long enough to get advanced enough technology to come out and meet us, or what is that? Or maybe it really just is that space is so unimaginably vast, it's the vastest of vastness, that our odds of even detecting a sentient civilization are close to 0. And so it's always going to seem like we're alone, because every time we look, It's like we're looking at a glass of water from the ocean and being like, huh, there's no fish in here. I guess there's no fish anywhere, which would obviously be ridiculous. And that's kind of a disturbing thought, isn't it? Because of technology, there could be aliens or civilizations, intelligent beings all around us, but we will never have the capability to actually detect them. Like the glass of water from the ocean. Seems sad, doesn't it? But that's why scientific inquiries like this are interesting and often fruitful and can give us, insights into better algorithms and ways of doing things. So we are looking for a needle in a haystack. Will we ever find that needle? Ugh. According to the haystack fractions for space, it's going to be really difficult. But that's why you can look at 10 million different star systems and not hear a single peep, because space maybe is too big to understand. Let's see what chat has to say. Oh man, we have a $200 donation from Innocuous Remark, who says, Kyle, you make me want to grow my hair out and incrementally transform my brain into a computronium substrate. Once you become a Jupiter brain, I will pledge fealty to you. We have a $10 from the Ryshanic. I always try to get it right. It says, congratulations on 300k subs. Looking forward to seeing your streams and videos. Simple for science. Baby. Thank you, Professor Ryshanic. Very nice. Yeah, 300,000 subs. We're back up. I'm back on my way to the top, baby. Taking a little bit longer than I expected, but over 10 million views on the channel across 40, 50 videos. And we have some very cool stuff coming down the pike from messing around with not messing around, but exploring actual radioactive material that is about 5 feet from me over there. Kevin, yeah, move it away, move it further away. It's too close to my gonads. So from radioactive material to, I think I want to update the chain whip. I think Thea and I want to make it bigger and better and smash some really crazy stuff. And I'm also doing a build for an anime episode that is going to be awesome, and it involves gravity. And oh, I can't wait. And we're going to be getting a little weird this week, where it's going to be a little bit outside of our realm, where it's going to be more engineering-y and less physics-y. And we're looking into how a certain thing is constructed and why it may be constructed in a way that you didn't expect. Jake Thompson with the $4.99, he says, do you think the first sentient aliens we encounter could be the AI they left behind after their extinction, or more primitive ones? Well, someone's been playing Mass Effect. But I don't know. There's this is a space travel argument too. Do you send humans or do you send robots? Robots can travel for, relatively speaking, forever in one direction, and they could always be looking for life, and if they had enough power source, they could beam back something if they ever encountered something. Or do you send humans because they can do everything faster and it would be cooler? Well, similarly, imagine aliens in the flipped perspective, where maybe they are sending out AI probes, and you could send out thousands and thousands and thousands in all directions for thousands of years. So is it more likely? I don't know. You would need a real expert opinion on the exploration and the exploration of civilization throughout space. That's something that I'm not really. I mean, you can tell I can hardly make a sentence finish. We have $9.99 from Parker Brilliant, who says, since we're on the topic of alien life with your love of the Expanse, would that be the coolest? What would be? Jeez, I am crazy. What would be the coolest ancient alien technology that we could discover? Hashtag Halo love. Yeah, I think any one of those any one of those megastructures, like in Halo, would be indicative of a civilization that is so far beyond our own. It's ridiculous. Like we are ants compared to them, right? So like a Halo ring, a Dyson sphere, gravitational slingshot technology, Jupiter brains, any of that would be so far beyond our understanding. It would be as if it were magic. And so you'd have that Arthur C. Clarke quote come true. And that would be, I think, the most mind-blowing thing by default. Something we can't even really understand. Sidecar with the HUF 1000. Sounds good. Hey Kyle, I was too quick. Can the Higgs boson have an antiparticle and could it generate negative mass? Simp for science. I have no idea. I think part of the standard model in particle physics is that most particles do have an antiparticle, but I do not know about the Higgs boson. That's a relatively speaking recent-ish kind of thing that I'm definitely not up on. But do you know what I am up on? Merchandise. Ooh, invisibly. Lilith with a 5 says, hey show, Kyle the Lup. I can't even read these anymore. You've mixed me up so much. Do you have a preferred brand of argan oil? Yes, I use one and only argan oil. It comes in I think they all come in like a brownish thing to protect it from degeneration from sunlight, but one and only. And with that, I'm giving my secrets. We are going to move on to our second topic. Wow, it's nice to be outside and do stuff, right? Well, we'll get to that. You probably shouldn't be outside doing stuff. But someone just sent me on Twitter a very interesting new proposal for technology. So, as should be the way, this is the way, humanity is going to trend towards greener energies, renewable energies. And that's kind of... Yeah, it's a weird thing to call it when, energy from the sun isn't actually renewable. It's just, for all intents and purposes, renewable. In that it's going to last for billions of years while being an energy source. It's not going to last forever. It's not completely like the wind will eventually, it'll change and die down, or the earth will end. Anyway, so the human society in the short term will tend towards greener and renewable energy sources. And this one is a very interesting one because it's super duper simple and it solves an interesting problem. So you may know that the power grid fluctuates a lot, and it fluctuates a scary amount. We are on a knife's edge from like blacking out all the time. But it's always on a knife's edge of too much energy. We have energy excess being generated, and then we have too little energy being generated. There's too much demand for how much electricity is actually in the grid or what have you. So there's always this up and down of excess and then not enough and excess and not enough. In theory, it would be perfect if it was just the perfect amount all the time. And so there's ways that you can mitigate those shortages and those excesses, like batteries. So you store, when you have excess energy, instead of just letting it go to waste, you store it in a battery, and then when you have high demand, you discharge those batteries, and you help flatten those excess and not enough curves to a straight line. But this technology, called gravitricity, which is fun to say, or gravitricity, which is not as fun to say, gravitricity has a really, really simple solution for this kind of excess, not enough problem that they say is much better and much, much more efficient than batteries. Now, what it is exactly what it looks like. It is a big hole in the ground with 500 to 50,000 tons on cables. And that's it. No, I can hear what you're saying. But Kyle, what does that do? Well, first of all, lovely voice. Second of all, it is literally storing energy. So I think, batteries are much easier to grasp in terms of, hey, there's, you can get a chemical reaction out of this and you can get energy out of it. But anything suspended above the center of mass of the Earth has gravitational potential energy. And so it will always take some energy to raise something up away from Earth's gravity. And when you're on the surface of Earth, you can kind of idealize that equation to the mass of the thing times the acceleration due to gravity on Earth's surface, multiplied by the height above Earth's surface. So if you raise something that's 10 kilograms 1 meter off of the ground, it's going to require about 98.1 joules. Not so bad, right? But now that is gravitational potential energy. It is, as long as you keep that mass above the source of gravitation, that energy is just going to be there. And when you release that energy, you can release it and it can do things. It will transform into kinetic energy as it gets closer and closer to the center of mass, or center of gravity rather. And so with this, you can help flatten out, or so the makers say, you can help flatten out this problem because it's flexible. Again, as they say, I'm not doing a product endorsement. It is just interesting. So when you have excess energy, that energy goes into raising the mass. It goes into these winches, and that excess energy is then turned literally into gravitational potential energy. And then when, say, a stadium or whatever needs excess energy, you just release the weight. And as you release the locks on the weight, or however they're going to do it, in under a second, they say they can generate like 10 megawatts or something, which is, 10 million watts. It's a lot. 10 megawatt hours rather, which can power 13,000 standard homes for 2 hours. They can do that in under a second. So they'd be able to meet rapid increases in energy while storing energy in the interim by raising up this weight. So we have an excess. Oh, we need some more energy. Vroom. You let the weight down. The weight spins the winches the other direction, which can generate electricity in however way they're going to do it. With any kind of motion like that, you can just... It's arbitrary at that point. But this gravitricity thing is really interesting to me because it is so simple, and they're just only testing it in a very small area, but they can put... 100 blue whales worth of mass on the end of these winches, and they can use existing and abandoned mine shafts so they don't have to dig out all this earth. And so if you put this, all around the country, all around the world, it would be another one of those measures that could help us address our energy problems. And it's so simple. I really like its simplicity. Just take a cable and pull something up into the air, and when you need energy, let it go. That's great. It reminds me of another thing. I think my second or third gig on camera ever, I went to a solar tower in Nevada, and they had a cool way of storing energy. So you don't, what people who love fossil fuels and, probably our lobbyists say, is that, well, what if it's cloudy? What about at night? Blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're smart about it, what this solar tower did in Nevada, a little bit outside of Vegas, they used the excess heat generated by the solar tower to heat molten salt, or just salt. And this salt would hold on to this heat for a very long time, so that even in the middle of the night, it was hot enough to generate steam energy. And so it was taking energy from the sun and pumping it into salt, and then the salt is molten, and then it has some heat energy, and that heat energy then is transmitted into, or transformed rather, into steam energy and turbines. So that was a fun little way of doing that. But do you think it was fun? Let's see what the chat has to say. Silvos with the 20 says, what method of communications do you think we will use when we find alien life? I think that Arrival is an amazing exploration of that, but I have no idea. What Carl Sagan and others who made the golden record, they wanted to keep it simple. So, try to speak in the language of mathematics or in the relation of planets in our solar system to each other, something like that, but I do not know. Heavy Hard Drive says, wouldn't the cables falling create a kinetic energy explosion? Well, yeah. but like you harness that. Kevin Stempine with the 20 says, imagine if Hulk got his mass from CO2 like trees. It would explain where the mass comes from. Also, you could incorporate it into a story. For example, being on a planet with less CO2, allowing him to only partially transform. Yes, as I pointed out in a Because Science episode, whenever the heck it was, trees get more than 90% of their mass directly out of the air from carbon dioxide. They take the carbon dioxide and then they use their leaf technology and they slice off the carbon and they take that carbon and they incorporate it into their mass. And so it doesn't come from the ground or water or nutrients in the ground, straight out of the air. I like where your head's at, Kevin, but in terms of a Hulk thing, to go from Banner to the Hulk is a few seconds process, right? So imagine the volume of air he would have to somehow draw into his pores of his body in such a short, in just a few seconds. I'm guessing it's many, many cubic meters of air. And so around the Hulk, like, don't get me angry or else you'll feel a tremendous rush of air in towards me as I suck in a bunch of carbon dioxide. And before you can get the carbon from the carbon dioxide, you still have to deal with the gas, right? And so you can't just... He would have to inflate like crazy. And not like muscle inflate, like inflate. That volume just doesn't go nowhere, you know? Doc A with the 11 euros who says, hey, love, show the Kyle. Oh. Don't give that. Did you watch the new Invisible Man? Would this invisibility be possible and better than the usual one? I did not watch the new Invisible Man. How did they do it? Was it metamaterials around the body? That would be better, but you could still see their eyes. We have the plane shifter with 10, I'm going to say Russian dollars. Hey, oh God, why do you keep doing this to me? I'm having legitimate problems. A thought I entertained about alien civilizations that are as intelligent as humans but have no appendages capable of creating tools. Add that to the Fermi paradox. I don't think I read that correctly, but that is interesting. Completely intelligent and sentient aliens that cannot create tools and so can never get off their planet. That's fun. But then maybe they would do what the Combine did in Half-Life, and they would just harness the abilities of creatures. So the grubs in Half-Life, they are telekinetic and they can snap your neck just by thinking about it, but you know, super intelligent grubs that could make other species subservient and make them do the heavy lifting. I think that's probably a possibility, right? Somehow. Oh, I guess a card just went up over... Kevin, did you do that? A lot of people saw the Drowning Machine video already. It's fine. Kyle Trevino with the 23 says, finally caught you live from one Kyle to another. Keep on being amazing. Hey, Kyle. Nice name. We have to be out there, Kyle Strong, letting people know that we don't just pound Monster Energy drinks. I mean, we both know that we do, and that we love dirt bikes. But don't let them know that, okay? Thanks, man. Thanks for being here. Now, let's stop the super chats for just a second so we can go on to our third topic. Trying to get down to all these amazing comments. Okay, so person with briefcase. So a couple guy with stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, I published my video on what I wanted to say about the threat of nuclear annihilation. And it was a very somber video. I encourage you to watch it if you haven't yet. It's called The End of History. And in that video, I was trying to make clear just how close we are and just how easy it would be to stumble into annihilation. And in researching that video, you know, I came upon a number of experts and advisors who had different ideas on how we should control our nuclear weapons and how we should keep them under lock and key, or you know, one of the big problems, which I mentioned, was sole authority of the president. So more or less it can come down to one person's split-second decision. Like, you have 3 minutes to decide if you want to annihilate a few billion people. And a lot of advisors, myself included, think that kind of decision and that kind of power is insane. And so, in researching this video, and this won't be a long segment, I came upon this quote from an advisor for one of these things, for one of these panels and recommendations. And this was his idea to accurately get across how dire and how terrible nuclear weapons are to someone like the president if they had to make a decision. So usually there's just a guy following the president around, not like right behind him. Guy following a president around with nuclear codes and the necessary documentation and code phrases and stuff that you would need to launch a nuclear weapon. But these are just in bags. What this advisor said would be much better and would really give the president a real idea of what they're dealing with here. This was their recommendation. Let me just bring this up. My suggestion was I'm quoting the advisor now. My suggestion was quite simple. Put that needed code in a little capsule and then implant that capsule right next to the heart of a volunteer inside of the body. The volunteer would carry with him a big, heavy butcher knife as he accompanied the president. If the president wanted to fire nuclear weapons, the only way he could do so would be for him first, with his own hands, to kill this human being. The president says, quote, "George, I'm sorry, but tens of millions must die," end quote. He has to look at someone and realize what death is, what an innocent death is. Blood on the White House carpet. It's reality brought home. When I suggested this to friends in the Pentagon, they said, quote, "My God, that's terrible. Having to kill someone would distort the president's judgment. He might never push the button," end quote. So the fact that an advisor for nuclear weapons thought this was a good idea to get the gravitas across shows you the insanity of the situation that we find ourselves in. It's too easy to be removed from this problem. And that's the really frustrating thing here, is that every single one of us on this planet should be concerned about this. And yet almost none of us are, because it's so far removed. It's abstracted. What this advisor is saying is, do this in such a way that the president can't just look at a number and say a code and kill millions of people. Make it so you have to look someone in the face. Make it so it feels real. This idea is not as crazy as the situation we're in. I'd advise you to look into places if you're really concerned. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist, which is a great resource, or the William J. Perry Project. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention because this is crazy, and this is crazy. And 2020 doesn't need another thing to check off. Hey, it's Star Trek's anniversary today, and I made the... Matt Takahashi says, "It is what it is." That is exactly the problem, that kind of attitude. I don't mean to call you out, Matt, but it is what it is because we allow it to be. We don't have to. Blade Baca with the 10 says, "Hey Kyle, thanks for doing what you do. It has in part inspired me to pursue a secondary science education degree. Also planning to get the Pioneer map tattooed on my arm when things settle down. Simp for science. Hiya! I support you and your educational journey. If I could, if I was some way beneficial to it in any way, you humble me, and be passionate, take it really seriously, and I'm sure you'll do great." We have 5 from Shane. How far could Spider-Man's web actually fly? Do you think it can actually hit a building or act more like silly string? That's the problem. Without a lot of weight to the webbing, it's not going to go very far in air, especially if it's traveling at like however fast it looks like 50, 60, 70 miles an hour or whatever. It's going to encounter a lot of air resistance. So it needs to be like weighted at the end or something, or else it's just going to be, yeah, kind of silly stringy. We have Cordra69 says, hey Kyle, first time catching you live. If you could ask one question from someone 1,000 years in the future, what would you ask? Did we make it? Oh, that was kind of depressing, huh? We have Zero Flack with the 10 from New Zealand. 10 New Zealand dollars. So now I'm going to attempt... No, it's just going to be Australian. I'm not going to intentionally offend you here. Hey, Kyle, love you and the work that you do. I love your prime minister. She is a smart, intelligent lady that follows the science. She's great. I've tweeted at her. She seems lovely. I've read that the best solar panels are only 23% efficient. What limits their efficiency? What could you do to improve this to 45%? Same as a gas power plant. I don't know. That's a physics related question, and like the photoelectric effect and stuff. I don't actually know where the main failure point in terms of efficiency is. I'm assuming most of it is lost as heat. And not converted directly into electricity, so I don't actually know. If someone's in the chat and you work with solar panels, maybe you could put it in there. I bet it's like a physicsy, photoelectric-y kind of efficiency thing. But there's also probably, again, I'm just speaking from no knowledge here, but there's also probably an efficiency limit. For heat engines, for example, in like power plants, there is an efficiency limit, like the Carnot, it's a French term, CARNOT. The Carnot efficiency is the efficiency that you can't even theoretically pass because of thermodynamics, but I don't know what that is for solar panels. Evan Ged, let's hold the super chats for just a second. Let's get to some of the people in the audience here. Evan Ged with Evan Ged 1 says, "Hey Kyle, did you major in science or are you just very passionate about science or both? Just curious." Ha ha. Both. So I have a degree in civil and environmental. I have a degree in civil environmental. I say that so often that I have a degree in civil engineering and a major in environmental engineering. And then I also have a master's degree in communication, focusing on science communication. So when I was in college finishing my engineering degree, I realized that I was really passionate about teaching and outreach and getting people excited about STEM kind of stuff and just being nerdy by myself. And so then I transitioned from engineering. They did offer me a full master's degree ride in the engineering department I was in, so it was very tempting, but I went into also full ride. I also went into communications instead, and that confused many of my engineering professors, but hey, look at us now. Brexit Britain says, is the castle made of beef or is the doctor a cow? Well, one of my security team in the chat is Dr. Beef Castle. That's because he's muscular, and that's what I call him. Or maybe canonically you should be a cow now. A big cow. Like the cows that walked around the cow level in Diablo 2. Moo. You know, the voice of those cows were of the developers because it was a secret level. I'm getting off track. We have 10 from Dawal, who says, question about idiotic super beings. How come Galactus never figured out how to farm? Terraform a Matryoshka world, feed an entire solar system, instead of being the de facto Marvel Fermi paradox. Well, that was a lot of fancy words you put in there. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, feed on an entire solar system. Yeah. Well, I think it's because the writers didn't think about it. But you're right in... Yeah, terraform one of these mega structure worlds, like it's like Dyson rings, Dyson sphere kind of things, Matryoshka brain, Matryoshka brains, which is these nested rings or nested spheres, which is like an upgrade from a Jupiter brain. Yeah, just terraform that and feed off of that forever, getting the majority of the sun's energy, put it into organisms and put it into your big old purple body. Yeah. You dumb Galactus. Why didn't you just do that? Well, because then he couldn't advance the story. He'd just be out there just not being threatening. I'm with you. He should have learned to farm like Thanos. It's all up in there. DL says, Kyle, can you make a slingshot? Can you slingshot a beam of light on a black hole to make it go fast? Yes, no. You can slingshot light around a black hole. You cannot make light go any faster. At its top speed of, 300,000 kilometers per second, that's speed of light, universal speed limit, full stop. But there's a very interesting area around a black hole called a photon sphere. And that is the area around, that's the area which photons coming in, so, light coming in towards the black hole at a certain angle will actually just start orbiting the black hole and never fall into it. And that's the photon sphere. So they stay there. But to answer your question, for photon pathways that aren't perfectly in the photon sphere, they come in and they get slung, not sped up, they just get slung shot around. Slung shot is the past tense of that. So let's pause on the super chats for a second as we go on to our second to last topic. That was not Kevin. Which button did I? Peer review. So as I'm getting a little chunky here in terms of my CPU usage. Turn on the cooling fan. There we go. I upped the cooling system. So as we are wont to do on office hours, I'd like to go back to the comment section of the previous episode at the facility and pick out something that I thought was funny or interesting or wrong. And I like to highlight it. And then I like to get that person a plaque this time. You can become an honor remember. Today, that is Matt's Grungy, who says, I have another possible contender for the most dangerous water in the world. So in my episode, which you can watch back on the channel, I talked about the most dangerous or artificially dangerous, because I didn't want to think about, is shark-infested waters technically more dangerous? I don't think so. I think this is the most dangerous water in the world because it's a portion of electrified river, the Chicago Sanitary and Shipping Canal, 20 miles south of Chicago. And this water has so much electricity pulsing through it that your chances of going into cardiac arrest and drowning if you fall into the water are above 50%. That is so much better than your chances of being bitten by a shark or attacked by a crocodile or whatever else could be in the water. And Matt points out, as some other people did, well, have you thought about another artificial contender? Nuclear reactor spent fuel rod pools, or just nuclear reactor pools. So these are pools in which you submerge in water, usually like seawater, or you're close to a reservoir water. Excuse me. You submerge the nuclear fuel rods. You do this to keep them cool because nuclear fuel rods by themselves emit so much radiation that if you put them near each other, there's so much high energy particles coming off of them, they start smacking into each other. Smacking, 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 smacking. And they start to heat themselves up. And in a meltdown situation, that's what happens. There's not enough cooling, and it gets so hot it just melts itself because it's so radioactive, which is kind of metal, and is metal, and is kind of metal. I was in a loop for a second there. So this cooling water acts as a way to cool that down and regulate the speed at which the reaction proceeds. And that was a big problem, you may remember if you watched the Chernobyl miniseries, when they talk about void fractions and stuff. That's, well, if the water starts bubbling or boiling, well, then inside of those bubbles you have no water, clearly, and then radiation will go through those bubbles differently, and then you might start to have a runaway reaction. Anyway, so these pools, at the bottom of them sit, this is what I'm getting to, sit highly, highly, highly radioactive stuff, where if you went down, if you jumped in one of these pools, you swam down, and you grabbed one of these rods, you'd probably die. You wouldn't die instantly, that's not how radiation works, but you'd probably receive a fatal dose, and a few days later you would die an excruciating death, and your skin on your hand would fall off. I'm not exaggerating. Kyle, isn't that worse than an electrified river? I don't think so. because as XKCD once calculated in his wonderful blog and book of the same name, What If, there's a portion of water in which you are in these nuclear pools in which you are receiving actually the least amount of radiation that you ever have. Because water is a good shield from radiation, if you jump into the pool and dive in just like 2 feet, you're now blocking cosmic radiation from space, and you're too far away from the nuclear fuel rods, which are many, many feet below you, and they're not irradiating you either. So you're actually quite insulated, and you're safer than you were on the surface of the planet. But why I don't agree that is more dangerous is that in these nuclear fuel rod pools, you would have to actively try to die. You would have to jump in and then swim down and then touch it. It's with intention. Whereas for the most dangerous water in the world in my episode, you just fall in. And the Coast Guard will not attempt to rescue you. If you fell into a nuclear fuel rod pool, you would tread water, and then, a guard would probably shoot you in the face, but someone might help you if, like, you were a scientist there. You're like, oh. I know it's not like big open pits, but if you fell in, you tread water, someone would help you out, and that would be that. In this water, you fall in, you start having a heart attack. If anyone tries to grab you and help you out, they also have a heart attack and die. So I'm pretty sure it is the deadliest water in the world. But for making us think about that, Matt Grungy, you are now an honorary member of the facility. Fantastic. Fantastic. What do you mean? What is this, the 21st time this has happened? How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, old Kevin? I'm sorry, Matt. We're going to have to take a quick commercial break where I hope there's no weird horror-style art of the basilisk. I'll be right back. Oh, did something weird happen? No idea. Let's see what the chat has to say. Henry Price says, yeet. Wasted opportunity. Tazalith with a 2 says, what would happen if we collided Pluto with Mars? They would both be destroyed. Tatar Rick says, I miss the because science, Kyle. I still feel pretty similar, but too bad. Look, we're doing a different thing at the facility here now. We're evolving. I'm taking ideas, little narrative things, concepts. We're engaging with science and with outreach in a different way. We're doing different kinds of videos, and for right now, I'm actually pretty proud of what we've been doing. And for all the professors and all the simping, I think we're doing great. Ish. I'm not where I want to be over this time period, but we're getting there. Zachary Cool with the 5 says, hey Kyle, how do we get large numbers of people to save the world? Because I feel like a lot of the people, I feel like a lot of people want to, but they feel powerless. Well, this is going to sound pretty basic, but take political action. I mean, there's 2 steps to these larger problems. One is to educate yourself on the topic so that you feel like you could talk about it and you understand the ins and outs of it, and then take political action. If you're really serious about something, vote for people who are also serious about it. Advocate for politicians and policies that align with these values that we think will save the world or help make society better, or at least more sustainable. You have to get out there and you have to make your voice heard, because if not, you're not powerless. You can at least say something. Especially, I mean, for how much I hate social media, and I do hate social media, one thing that it's made much easier to do is engage with people in power. And you can do that. You know, there's many stories about, you know, Congress people, for example, if you live in the United States, or senators, where it's like, well, if they start getting, they have like their aide tell them, well, it's like, well, if they start getting like X amount of tweets or calls or letters per day, they will start like really paying attention to it. So, I mean, write a letter, join a group, donate some money to a foundation, make your voice heard. That's what I try to do using my high-tech platform. The boss with the 50 from Korea? What would happen if you attached a really long pole to a spacecraft and sent it into a black hole? Could we gain any information about black holes? Unfortunately, no, because anything that's falling into a black hole is going to accelerate towards, well, a black hole isn't like a thing, an object, but this theoretical, this like mathematical surface that we call the event horizon, past which the effective surface gravity of it is, the effective escape velocity, rather, of it is faster than the speed of light. So even if you could put a pole past the event horizon, any information that the end of that pole gathered, I don't know how you're exactly, are you just poking this thing? Don't poke a black hole. You can quote me on that. But any information it would glean would not be able to escape, because to escape, if it has mass, it wouldn't, you would need an infinite amount of energy to accelerate it faster than its escape velocity. And if it was just signals, like photons of light, those still don't move fast enough to escape. They would also be drawn into it. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to pull it back out, is what I'm saying. It'd be too strong. We have Chase with the 5, who says, what about high salt and acid lakes in Ethiopia, where even extremophiles cannot live? Yeah, there's definitely some very dangerous lakes that are like either like, you know, like boiling, or they have such high concentrations of, like you said, acid or other chemicals. Those are better contenders than the fuel rod pools, I think. But still, none of that stuff is like, oh, if you just like put your toe in it, you could have a heart attack. Still feels, because like you put your hand in acid or boiling hot spring water, that's gonna really mess up your hand, but you're not gonna immediately start convulsing and then die. So let's pause the super chats because we're almost near the end of the show. Cody Nasbit with a 10 says, because you know the cow level from Diablo 2, here's $5, shut up and take my money. Thank you, I appreciate that. I ground a lot of time in, I ground a lot in Diablo 2, especially Lord of Destruction. I was so about making necromancers work. Love me a Poison Nova, a Bone Spear. What a fantastic game. And I really enjoyed Diablo 3 too. It's best on the Switch, fight me. And I play seasons of that game sometimes. So let's move on to our very last topic. And Nigel with the 5 says, Kyle Love, show the hay. Man, I'm out here to learn and to simp for science, and I'm all out of cash. Well, thanks for your last $5. Nigel, you're gonna want to stick around for this last segment, because this one's kind of important, and it's gonna be for mostly for you Americans out there. But as a person with a platform, as we were talking before with one of you, you need to say something when you see something. So let's do that. There's a YouTube channel I like, and I bet you would like it too if you like my content. It's called All Gas No Brakes, where this young man just travels across the country going to very interesting gatherings of people. So like flat earth conventions, adult, how do I phrase this? Like porno conventions, alien believer conventions, and places with a lot of very interesting people with a lot of very interesting views. And what he does, he just goes around. All he does is he just puts the microphone in their face and just lets them talk. And often what comes out of their mouth is, again, interesting. I'm not being judgmental here. But he released a video a couple days ago from the Sturgis motorcycle rally, which is, I guess, one of the biggest in the country, and one of the biggest continuous rallies in the country. And he went to it and he interviewed a bunch of people. And it was, like his other videos, interesting. Seeing what these people's attitudes were from a demographic that I don't belong to. And almost all of them that he interviewed weren't wearing masks, were rallying against masks, had a very strong political viewpoint about being told what to do, told to wear masks and that kind of thing. And if you're not of the same persuasion, you can write that off as like, oh, they're just, they're just wrong, or they're just, I don't agree with them, but it's not so bad. I still go to my friend's house during the pandemic. You say that. So with a large gathering of people intentionally going against, like deliberately going against the advisements of something like the CDC, going to a rally where the disposition of people is going to tend towards not wearing masks, and we don't have to get into the political angles that I'm hinting at here, but the demographics are such that not everyone's going to be wearing a mask. And you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people going there. So when you do studies based on cell phone data, and this was very recent, I think yesterday or today, you can literally see the effects. So here is, on the bottom left here, is a map of people traveling to the Sturgis rally. And the density of people traveling to, which means all those people are going to go back to all those areas. Notice that it includes the entire country. If you look in the top left, you can see the predicted increase in COVID-19 cases in Meade County and South Dakota, all of South Dakota. And the blue dotted line is the predicted increase. The red line is the actual increase directly after the motorcycle rally. So what a gathering like this literally did was immediately spike the number of cases. And then all of these people went back to all across the country. And again, because we've been living with this for 6 months, I feel like a lot of us are kind of numb to this, but this is incredibly serious. Because the bars were up in percentage, nearly 100% attendance rate in Sturgis. The attendees returning back to their respective states caused rises of 11% in those states. For a total, from this one event with these people, of almost 300,000 additional cases. 20% of all the COVID-19 cases in the United States in August, one gathering. Think about that. In a show of defiance, in trying to reclaim back something from this pandemic, 20% of the cases in a 300 million person country, 1/5 of the cases in a month, one event. The virus doesn't care about how you feel. It doesn't care if you feel like you're uncomfortable wearing a mask. It doesn't care if you feel like, you know, your freedoms are being lessened because someone with a suit tells you not to do something. The virus doesn't care. And it's incredibly good at what it does. A couple thousand people gathering, 19% case increase. Not increase, but responsible for 19% of cases. And if we don't look into that more so, it's still, I don't think it hits. So what does that 20% mean? What did going to this event actually do? Well, another study found about $12 billion in estimated additional healthcare costs. 12 billion. This event is causing a national, what would be on par with a national disaster, like a hurricane. This is a hurricane of stupidity, what just happened. One of the journalists that I follow put it this way. This cost would have been the same as paying everyone who attended $26,000 to stay home. But instead, it's actually going to translate into thousands more people dead. I know this isn't a uniquely American problem, but it seems like America is trying to normalize living with the pandemic instead of trying to end it. Stay home. The virus doesn't care. And I know if you're someone who would go to something like that, I know you're probably not going to listen to me sounding the way I do and the way I look and the views that I hold. But don't do it for me. Do it for someone's brother who had 3 heart attacks and then wasn't able to survive the 4th. So anyway, what does the chat have to say? We're at the end of the show here. Let's not do any more super chats because I don't want to miss anybody. But wow, we did a lot of stuff today. Some depressing, some fun. So what did we go through today? Well, of course, we talked about the search for extraterrestrial intelligence and why we may not find aliens and kind of a solution to the Fermi paradox. Maybe we just can't see the volume. Maybe we can just never find that needle in the haystack because the haystack is what scientists call hella thick. We also talked about a very clever energy storage device in a way that like the Hulk would be proud of. Just lift thing, then unlift it. Great. Gravitricity, I believe it's called. We also talked about a crazy way to solve the sole authority of the president in relation to nuclear weapons. That was as crazy as the problem with nuclear weapons. We took one of your comments from the latest episode of The Facility about the most dangerous water in the world. And while a lot of you did have some good contenders, I am still standing strong with that is the most dangerous water in the world, I think. And then we finally talked about stay home. It translates into real world tremendous suffering. Economic suffering on the scale of a hurricane. Personal suffering on the scale of losing a loved one when they were, way too young. And economic suffering isn't, it doesn't always track with that. But if you're so concerned about the economy, stop killing people. Motorcycles are cool. I know. My dad has one. It's rad. But don't go and tell all your buddies without masks on how rad it is all the time. Please. I implore you. I hope you had a good time with Office Hours today. I apologize. I was trying to drink my tea. I'm a little out of it today, so I hope that I was coherent and intelligent and interesting. But I can promise that I will probably be that in the future, or try to be. And if you want to see me do that, you can go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill, and you can talk to me almost every day on Discord, episodes early, behind the scenes content, Magic the Gathering leagues, RPG nights, trivia nights, all this stuff. I think there's over 700 people in the Discord and over 1,200 people on the Patreon. So if you want to, you can sign up with the link that my security team is putting in the chat right now. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you had a great Labor Day weekend. If you celebrate and you're in America, I don't know if they do it in other countries. Anyway, have a great rest of your week. New episode coming out this week. It's a little bit different, like we said, but engineering related and very fun, hopefully. And it's a collaboration. with a YouTuber that you may know, and he's a good guy from down under. I was thinking about how I wanted to phrase it. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, be nice to each other, please, because this is all we got.